He bought 4 Chinese women being auctioned by settlers, until one whispered the year was 1871, and the frontier was the kind of place that stripped a man down to the bone. Redwater Creek wasn't a town so much as a scar carved into plains, a cluster of weathered shacks and gunmetal roofs huddled against the wind. The main street ran crooked between saloons, stables, and a church that hadn't heard of him in years. Dust moved like smoke through the air, clinging to sweat, blood, and whiskey breath. By noon, a crowd had gathered outside the trading post, their faces flushed with the same fever that came over men whenever money changed hands. Horses stamped, dogs barked, spurs jingled, a restless energy humming in the heat. On a crude platform stood 4 Chinese women, their wrists bound with hemp rope, eyes downcast under the jeers of settlers. Behind them, a man in a sun-bleached hat shouted prices, like a preacher selling salvation. "Let's start the bid at $50, he cried. "Strong hands, gentlemen. Good for cooking, cleaning, whatever else you fancy." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone spat. Someone else whistled. A woman flinched as a rancher with tobacco-stained teeth reached up to lift her chin. "Don't be shy, darling. Let's see those eyes." She didn't move. The rancher's grin soured. He backhanded her across the face. The sound cracked like a gunshot. From the edge of the crowd, Elias Kane looked up. He was a tall man, shoulders broad beneath a duster worn thin from the trail. His beard was graying, his hands calloused from years behind a plow and rifle alike. A long scar ran from his temple to the corner of his jaw, a relic from a war he didn't talk about. He'd come into Redwater Creek that morning for lumber and salt. He hadn't meant to stay long. He hadn't meant to get involved. But when that slap echoed through the square, something inside him shifted. A memory flashed. Muddy trenches, a child's scream, smoke choking the sky. The same cruelty, only in a different tongue. The auctioneer laughed. "Well, now she's got spirit. Who'll give 60? Elias pushed through the crowd. Boots scraped against the boards as men turned, eyes narrowing. He stopped at the edge of the platform, voice low and steady. "I'll take them." The auctioneer blinked. "All 4. Elias nodded once. "All 4. The crowd murmured. Someone snorted. "Look at that. Kane's gone soft. Maybe them ghosts finally broke him." Elias didn't answer. He reached into his coat and tossed a leather pouch at the man's feet. It hit the boards with a heavy thud, gold coins spilling out like drops of light in the dust. The auctioneer crouched, whistling. "Hellfire, that's enough for a team of horses." "They'll work my land," Elias said. "They're not yours anymore." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the auctioneer shrugged, pocketed the gold, and sliced the ropes loose. "Your business, mister." Elias turned, gesturing for the women to follow. They hesitated, their dark eyes darting between him and the crowd. He didn't look back, just started walking toward his wagon, the sound of laughter following him down the street. "Mercy don't pay, Kane," a voice shouted. "They'll slit your throat for winter." He kept walking. The women said nothing as he loaded them into the wagon. They sat close together under canvas, their faces hidden behind their hands. He gave them a canteen, a loaf of bread, a blanket. Small things that made no sense to men who thought of people as property. Elias climbed onto the driver's bench and flicked the reins. The horses started forward, hooves thudding against the packed dirt. The town shrank behind them until only the saloon sign was visible, its paint peeling, swinging slow in the wind. The plain stretched wide and empty ahead. The sun bled orange into horizon. For a long while, no one spoke. Only the creak of wheels and the soft rattle of chains cut through the silence. Finally, one of the women, small, frail, her wrists raw, whispered, "Why, you buy." Elias didn't answer right away. He watched the road ahead, jaw tight. "Didn't feel right leaving you there." Another voice, sharper, "We not need pity." He glanced back. The speaker was older than the rest. Hannah, he would learn later. Her face was calm, her eyes deep and unreadable. "We pay our own way," she said. Elias met her gaze. "You don't owe me anything." She held his stare for a long moment, then looked away. "Everyone owes someone," she murmured. By dusk, they reached the first ridge beyond Redwater. Elias made camp near a half-frozen creek, built a small fire, and set a pot of beans to warm. The women huddled together under a blanket. One coughed, thin, dry, the kind of cough that carried winter with it. Elias tore a strip from his shirt, dipped in water, and offered it to her. She hesitated before taking it. He sat apart from them, the firelight painting the scars on his face in copper and shadow. The flames crackled, echoing the rifle fire that still lived in his dreams. He'd seen too much buying and selling of lives to stomach it anymore. Maybe this was his penance. Later, when the stars came out, he noticed movement near the edge of the trees. A flicker of light, a lantern, maybe. He rose, hand drifting to the revolver at his belt. "Stay close," he said quietly. The women froze. The fire hissed as the wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of hooves. He squinted into the dark, every muscle tensed. But the sound faded, swallowed by the night. He waited a long minute before lowering his hand. "Probably just a rider heading east," he muttered. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching from the timberline. When the women finally lay down to rest, Elias stayed awake, feeding the fire and staring into the glow. He thought of the war, of the men he'd buried, the orders he'd followed, the innocents caught between flags. He'd told himself he was done fighting other people's battles. And yet here he was again, dragging strangers out of hell with nothing but a rifle and a conscience that wouldn't quit. The fire popped. Sparks drifted upward, vanishing into the stars. "Fool's work," he muttered. A sound broke the silence. Soft, barefoot steps. Hannah stood behind him, wrapped in a wool shawl. Her hair hung loose, black as the night around them. "You should sleep," Elias said without turning. She stepped closer. "Sleep not safe." He frowned. "Why is that?" She hesitated. Then, in halting English, "They come for us." He looked up sharply. "Who?" "The men," she said. "The ones who sell. The ones who own. They come to take back what you buy." Elias stared at her, the flames flickering between them. "You're saying they'll follow us?" She nodded once, eyes full of quiet terror. "You not understand. You didn't buy us, you bought a death." The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled across the plains. By dawn, the sky was gray and swollen with clouds. Elias hitched the horses and loaded the wagon in silence. The women climbed in without a word, their faces pale and watchful. He checked his rifle, then glanced back toward the road they'd come from. Nothing moved, but the wind carried a faint echo of something metallic. Spurs. Chains. They set off again, the wheels cutting deep into the mud. The air grew colder. Hours later, as they crossed a ridge, snow began to fall, thin flakes swirling like ash. Elias pulled his coat tighter, scanning the horizon, and that's when he saw it. Far behind them, on the trail, a rider, dark coat, black horse, moving slow but steady. He watched for a long time, hoping the figure would turn aside. It didn't. Hannah noticed his gaze and followed it. Her breath caught. "He come," she whispered. Elias said nothing. He urged the horses faster, the wagon rattling down the slope. The wind howled through the pines. Snow thickened, blurring the line between sky and ground. He didn't look back again until they reached the valley floor, and by then the rider was gone. Night fell hard. They found shelter in an old way station, a rotted shack half buried in snow. Elias got a fire going while the women curled together in the corner. As he fed the flames, he heard Hannah whisper something in her own language, soft, rhythmic like a prayer or a warning. He didn't ask what it meant, but later, lying awake, the words echoed in his mind anyway. The fire dimmed. The wind moaned through cracks. And far outside, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a horse's whinny. Elias rose slowly, rifle in hand. He moved to the doorway and looked out. Snow drifted down, ghostly in the moonlight. The plains were silent, empty. Then a flicker, a lantern swaying in the distance, half a mile off. He tightened his grip on the gun. His breath steamed in the cold air. "Whoever you are," he muttered, "you best keep riding." But the light didn't fade. It just hung there like an eye staring back. He closed the door and dropped the latch. Behind him, Hannah whispered, "They always find us." That night, Elias didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, gun across his knees, listening to the storm creep closer. Snow hissed against the roof. The horses stomped restlessly outside. He told himself he'd made a mistake, that he should have walked away, left those women to their fate. But somewhere deep down he knew he couldn't have, because once, long ago, someone had done the same for him, and some debts you paid not with money, but with mercy. By morning, the world was white and silent. The wagon tracks behind them were gone, erased by the storm, but so were the footprints that had followed. For now, Elias looked east toward the mountains, jaw set. "We keep moving," he said. The women climbed into the wagon, clutching blankets tight around them. Hannah met his gaze. "You don't stop," she warned. He shook the reins. Wasn't planning to. The wagon rolled forward into the snow, creaking like an old ship at sea. And behind them, on the ridge, a black rider watched, silent, waiting. The storm hit before sunrise. By the time the light broke through, the world had turned to white silence, snow thick as though muffling every sound but the horses' ragged breaths. The trail to Cold Hollow had vanished beneath the drifts. Elias Kane hunched over the reins, his coat frozen stiff, beard frosted gray. Behind him in the wagon, the four women sat huddled under blankets, faces pale and frightened. Hannah stared straight ahead, eyes half shut, lips moving silently, either prayer or memory. Elias couldn't tell which. The wagon wheels caught in a rut. The horses snorted, refusing to move. Elias cursed under his breath, jumped down, and pushed against the wheel. His boots sank to his ankles in snow. The cold bit through his gloves like teeth. "Stay put," he told them. No one answered. When the wagon finally lurched free, Elias glanced back over his shoulder and froze. Through the curtain of falling snow, far up the ridge, a dark rider appeared again. Same coat, same horse, same stillness. He'd been following them for miles. "Get down," Elias hissed. He reached into the wagon bed, yanked the canvas over them, and grabbed his rifle. The sight wavered in the cold, but the figure didn't move closer. He aimed anyway, finger on the trigger, heart hammering. Then the wind rose, blowing snow so thick it swallowed the shape hole. When it cleared, the ridge was empty. Elias lowered the rifle slowly. "He's toying with us," he muttered. Back in the wagon, the women sat in tense silence. Sue coughed until her small frame shook. May rubbed her back, whispering something in Mandarin. Lien stared at Elias with open distrust. Finally, Hannah said, "We stop soon. You know keep go. Too cold." Elias shook his head. "We stop, we die." Hannah's dark eyes hardened. "Then we die anyway." By midday, they reached a frozen ravine. The storm eased to a gray drizzle of snow. Elias spotted a hollow beneath an outcrop of stone, just wide enough to shield him from the wind. He led the wagon inside, tied the horses, and built a small fire with what dry kindling he had left. Smoke curled lazily through the air. The women warmed their hands, steam rising from their breath. Elias watched them from across the flames. His arm ached from the cold, his knuckles cracked and bleeding. "You will be safer if we stay here tonight," he said. Lien's gaze cut sharp. "Safe? No place safe. They hunt, always hunt." Elias frowned. "Who?" No one answered. After a long silence, Hannah spoke. "You should have left us in town." Elias' voice was low. "Would have been wrong." "You think right and wrong still matter here?" she asked, eyes glinting in the firelight. "You think men who sell people care about right?" He met her stare. "Doesn't matter what they care about. Matters what I do." For the first time, she almost smiled. "You talk like soldier." "Used to be," he admitted. "Then you know," she said softly. "No one ever wins war. Only survivors." That night, the cold deepened. The fire burned low. The women drifted to uneasy sleep, except Hannah, who sat awake, staring into the dark beyond the cave mouth. Elias dozed lightly until a faint sound snapped his eyes open. Footsteps. Crunching snow. He motioned for silence, hand to his rifle. Hannah followed his gaze, saw the flicker of movement outside. The next second, a gunshot exploded. Sparks leapt from the cave wall. "Down!" Elias barked. He shoved the women back, rolled to the edge of the fire, and fired into the night. The blast echoed across the ravine. Another shot, closer, then silence. The horses screamed and reared. Elias darted outside, breath steaming, eyes scanning the shadows. The snow glowed faintly under the moonlight. Then there, a figure running through the trees, coat flapping like wings. Elias fired once. The figure stumbled, fell. He approached carefully, rifle raised. The man lay face down, blood seeping into the snow. A settler, one of the men from Redwater. Elias crouched, turned the body over and froze. Carved into the man's neck, burned deep into the flesh, was a symbol, a circle with 3 lines cutting through it. He'd seen it before, in the war, on the flags of mercenaries who took no sides. So this wasn't some drunk chasing vengeance. This was a hunt. He felt eyes on him again. From the trees, from the night. He backed away, rifle steady. When he returned to the cave, Hannah met his eyes. She didn't need to ask. She already knew. "They find us," she said simply. By morning, the storm had eased, leaving the world quiet and blue. The dead man's tracks led east, toward the mountains. But others, faint and fresh, circled wide behind them. They were being herded. Elias packed the camp fast. His shoulder throbbed where the cold had stiffened old wounds. He covered the women with the canvas again and snapped the reins. The horses trudged through the snow, heads low. Hours passed. The light thinned. Then, from behind, a rifle cracked. The back of the wagon splintered. "Down!" Elias shouted. Another shot tore through the canvas. May screamed. Lien pulled her down. Elias swung the wagon into a gully, jumped out, and fired uphill. He caught a glimpse of 2 riders, then 3, darting between the trees. Bullets whined past. Snow exploded in plumes around him. He fired again, hit one. The man tumbled from his horse. The others turned back, but not far. They lingered at the ridge, watching. Elias ducked behind the wagon, panting. Hannah crawled out beside him, pressing a rag to his bleeding arm. "You hurt," she said. "Been worse." She tore another strip from her dress, tied it tight. Her hands shook, but her eyes stayed steady. "They'll come again," she whispered. "Not stop until all gone." Elias frowned. Why chase this far? You hiding something?" Her silence answered him. That night, they made camp deep in the woods. Elias built a fire inside a hollow log and covered the light with branches. The air smelled of pine and fear. When the women finally slept, Elias sat apart, cleaning his rifle. He felt the weight of Hannah's gaze even before she spoke. "You think we worth this trouble?" He didn't look up, starting to wonder. She exhaled, voice low. "Not what you think. We not slaves. Not anymore." He froze. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small wooden box, no bigger than a Bible. Its sides were carved with Chinese letters. "What's that?" She placed it in his hands. It was heavier than it looked. Inside lay a folded document, sealed with red wax. "Message," she said, "for man in America. Rich man. Railroad. He promised safe passage, gold land. But he lie. He sell us instead." Elias looked at the box, then at her. "So that writer, he ain't after you. He's after this." She nodded. "We carry secret. Proof. Names. If truth come out, rich men fall. And they'll kill anyone who knows." "Yes." Elias rubbed his temples. "Damn fools. You could have burned it." She shook her head. "Some truths not meant to burn." The wind howled outside, shaking the branches. Elias stared into the flames, the paper seal glowing faintly in the firelight. "You should have told me sooner," he said. "Would you still help?" He thought of it. The danger, the blood already spilled, the ghost that still haunted him. "Yeah," he said finally. "Reckon I would." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe you not like other men. Before he could answer, a sound split the night, a wolf's howl, close and fierce. Then another. Elias sprang up, grabbing his rifle. "Stay behind me." The first wolf lunged from the dark, eyes glowing white. Elias fired, dropped it midair. Two more came from the side. He swung the rifle like a club, caught one across the jaw, kicked another back. Hannah screamed as a wolf lunged toward her. Elias spun, fired again, empty click. No bullets left. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire and thrust it forward. The beast yelped, retreated into the shadows. The pack circled once more, then vanished into the trees. Silence fell. Only the fire crackled. Elias sank to one knee, chest heaving. Hannah knelt beside him. "You always fight." He gave a tired laugh. "Don't know any other way." Dawn came pale and cold. The storm had cleared, revealing a trail of hoofprints leading deeper into the forest. Elias studied them. 5 riders, maybe 6. They were closing in. He turned to Hannah. "You ride?" She nodded. "Enough." "Then we split. 2 go north, 2 south. Draw them off." "No," she said firmly. "They want box. You take it. We go the way." Elias hesitated. "They'll kill you." She stepped close, eyes bright against the snow. "If we run together, all die. If we split, maybe some live." He hated it, but he knew she was right. He pressed the box into her hands. "Hide it well." She smiled sadly. "I trust you'd come back." "Don't," he said. "Men like me don't come back." By the time the sun reached the trees, they were gone, disappearing into 2 separate trails. Elias rode hard, trying to draw the riders away. But when he reached the ridge and looked back, he saw smoke rising from the direction Hannah had gone. He turned his horse without hesitation. By the time he arrived, the camp was in ruin. Footprints, blood, no sign of the women, only the snow churned red. He dismounted slowly, rifle in hand. Then he saw it, pressed into the snow beside a broken crate, a single hairpin carved from jade. He picked it up, closed his fist around it. A low growl escaped his throat. "She said they always come," he muttered. "Then I'll go to them first." He slung the rifle over his shoulder and started toward the east, into the trees, toward the smoke, the riders, and the reckoning waiting beyond Cold Hollow. The wind came down from the north that night, hard and bitter as regret. Elias could feel it slicing through his coat, gnawing at the wounds that still hadn't closed. The world around him was white and silent, just a hush of snowflakes falling on the graves of men who thought they were immortal. He reined his horse to a halt at the ridge overlooking Cold Hollow. Below, firelight flickered through the pine trees. The camp of the Redwater men. 6, maybe more. Rough shapes huddled around a wagon, laughing, drinking, celebrating whatever evil they'd done that day. Beside him, Limay sat astride a borrowed mare, wrapped in a torn cloak, her eyes steady despite the cold. She looked younger now. Maybe because for the first time since Redwater, she wasn't afraid. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "I do." "You think killing them will bring peace?" He looked at her then, really looked. Snow caught in her dark hair, and the moon lit her face in silver. "No," he said, "but it'll stop them from doing worse." From the wagon behind them came the quiet sobs of the other 3 women. The youngest, Lien, had taken a bullet through the shoulder 2 nights before. They were starving, half-frozen, and still running. Elias had promised them safety, and that promise burned heavier than any sin he'd ever carried. He touched his revolver. 6 bullets. 6 men. If the math held, maybe he'd see dawn. They descended the ridge like ghosts. Every crunch of snow sounded like thunder in Elias's ears. He signaled Limay to stay back as he moved through the shadows. The campfire crackled below, painting the world in hues of gold and blood. The outlaws were half drunk, arguing over spoils, coins, whiskey, bits of silk torn from the women's dresses. Their leader, Bo Larkin, sat with his boots up on a crate, his laugh echoing through the cold. "Hell," Bo was saying, "we should have kept them alive. Could have sold them to the army post for twice the price." Elias's hands trembled around the Colt. He'd known Bo once, ridden with him in the Dakota War, before Elias had found out that some men never stopped fighting, even when peace was offered. Bo had been mean back then. Now he was poison. Elias stepped from the shadows. You always did sell what wasn't yours. The laughter stopped. For a long second, the snowflakes hung still in the air. Then Bo's head lifted. Well, I'll be damned, he said, grinning through his beard. If it ain't preacher, Eli. I ain't preached in a long time. Bo rose slowly. His men stirred, hands going for rifles. Guess you came for your foreign doves, huh? Elias's gun barked once. The nearest outlaw dropped, his face vanishing into the snow. Chaos erupted, gunfire flashing in the dark, men shouting, horses screaming. Elias moved through it all like a storm given flesh, shooting, ducking, firing again. One man lunged at him with a knife. Elias turned, slammed his shoulder, and felt the blade bite through his coat. He fired point blank, saw the man's blood steam in the cold. Lee May screamed his name from the ridge. Elias! He spun to see Bo Larkin dragging her from her horse, pressing a gun to her neck. Drop it. Bo roared. Or she dies. Elias froze. Snow burned his lungs. He could taste blood in his mouth. Bo's eyes glittered in the firelight. You got soft, preacher. Thought you could save everyone. I can still save one, Elias said quietly. Then he threw his revolver aside. Bo laughed and pressed the barrel harder against Lee May's skin. You always were predictable. Elias's hand brushed something in the snow, one of the fallen men's rifles. Slowly, without moving his eyes, he shifted his foot, edging it closer. Why'd you take them? Bo sneered. You think them heathen girls worth saving? They ain't got souls, preacher. Maybe not, Elias said, but I sure as hell do. He kicked the rifle up, caught it, and fired. The shot split the night like thunder. Bo staggered back, eyes wide, the gun falling from his hand. Lee May tore free, stumbling into the snow. Bo tried to lift his weapon again, but Elias was already moving. He fired once more. Bo fell into the fire, and the flames swallowed him whole. The silence afterward was terrible. Smoke rose into the black sky, mingling with the falling snow. Elias dropped to his knees, breathing hard, the rifle slipping from his grip. Lee May ran to him. You're hurt, she whispered, pressing her hands against his side. The wound was deep. Blood darkened his coat. He smiled faintly. Guess I'm used to it. She shook her head, tears freezing on her lashes. You saved us. Elias looked toward the flames, where the last of Bo's men lay motionless. No, he said. You saved me. Back there, when you whispered in that cage, you reminded me I still had something left worth being. Her eyes softened. I said, don't let them take us. He nodded, and I didn't. They made camp by the edge of the hollow, the bodies buried under snow. The women huddled close around the fire, their faces hollow with exhaustion but touched by something new. Hope. Elias sat apart, staring into the flames, his vision blurred, maybe from blood loss, maybe from memory. He saw his wife's face there, Anna, smiling as she hung laundry on a summer's day before the fever took her. He saw his son, barefoot in the grass, laughing before the world went bad. Lee May came to him quietly, wrapping a blanket over his shoulders. You can rest now, she said. He shook his head. Not yet. There's no one left to fight. He looked at her, really looked. There's always something left. She took his hand. Then stay. Help us build something. We can go east. Start over. Elias closed his eyes. He could almost see it. Fields without graves, mornings without guilt. A world where names like Redwater and Cold Hollow were just echoes. But the blood kept seeping through his coat. His hand grew cold in hers. You go, he said softly. You tell them about this place. Tell them what men did here and what we stopped. Her breath caught. Elias. He smiled faintly. The Lord don't need a preacher. Just someone who remembers. The fire crackled. The wind carried his last words into the trees. By morning, the storm had passed. The snow lay untouched, save for a single line of tracks leading east. 5 horses, for women. When the sun rose over Cold Hollow, it found Elias slumped against the pine, his eyes half open, the faintest trace of peace on his face. In his pocket was a locket. Inside, a faded picture of a woman and child. And tucked beside it, a scrap of paper in careful Chinese script. For the one who remembered. Epilogue, narrator's reflection. They say the snow in Cold Hollow never melts where blood was spilled. Maybe that's true. Or maybe it's just the land's way of remembering what men like Elias did when the world forgot mercy. Those 4 women made it east, found a church in Kansas that took them in, built a life. They told their children about the man who bought them not to own them, but to save them. And if you ever ride to the Dakota Pines in winter, you might still see the light of a lone campfire under the trees. Some say it's just the wind. Others say it's him, Elias Ward, keeping watch. So what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The frontier wasn't just a place. It was a test of will, of decency, of how much a soul could lose before it remembered what it was made for. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like this, they ain't just about the past. They're about what kind of people we choose to be when the snow starts falling.